This video is for survivors of sexual abuse and sexual assault. Um, there's a lot of us out here. 1 in 6 males in the United States is molested before the age of 18. 1 in 6. If we figure half of our population of 350 million are male, roundabout, how much are we talking there? 175 million, right? Let's do some math here, folks. We'll do it on the calculator so I don't have to use my brain. It's pretty overpopulated at the moment. Too much going on. Let's go 175. Oh yeah, that keyboard doesn't work. 175 million divided by 6. I don't think that would be right. Well, let's go 175 divided by 6. $29 million. That's about 6% of the population. That ain't right. That ain't right at all. Like I said, I got a lot going on. How can that be? $29 million male victims of sexual assault in the United States. That's not a small number. That's a substantial number. See, when I'm overstressed, I kind of fidget with stuff, and I gotta make this pocket fit right, and I have to make sure that it's clean on top. And I have to. The more stressed I am, the more important those things are, the more important it is to have the routine. $29 million. That's a lot. And that's not just kids. It's not. Your grandpa might have been molested as a kid. Your dad, your uncle. Hell, your dad might have molested your uncle. You never know. Got this your book. Y'all might be familiar with the Boy Scouts. They're in a lot of trouble right now for doing the same thing as the Catholic Church. Not just the Catholic Church. Lots of churches actually covering up sexual misconduct and abuse against children. It doesn't just stop when you're a child, though. When you're an adult, you can also be abused. This is right at the very beginning of the book. How to protect your children from child abuse and drug abuse, a parent's guide. Should we go through this whole thing? Maybe we could. I got this book the first time when I was very young. I got mine secondhand. There was a Boy Scout book place nearby. They had uniforms and everything. I wasn't interested in the Boy Scouts at all. I didn't care about the Boy Scouts. This is the part that I cared about: ropes, knots, and splices. And of course, that's the first thing I got marked out here too. A lot of important stuff here, a lot of stuff that you can build yourself. You can save lives with this information. Just with these knots, you can save a lot of lives. In Nebraska, people are primarily infatuated with 3 knots: the overhand knot, the square knot, and the hangman's noose. Not cool. When boys or men are abused, it doesn't just have to be sexual abuse. We're told we just have to let it go. Oftentimes, we have people who tell us that it's our fault for being there. It is our fault for being there. Many of the things that I have heard women say to men who are abused are abhorrent. When you try to treat somebody who was touched inappropriately as if they weren't really molested. No, they were. Well, you weren't really molested because there was no penetration. No, you were getting your words mixed up. It is still sexual assault. I've had women tell me, they thought a guy was raping them with their eyes. And one of these guys, I know him, his name is Spencer. And he is kind of creepy looking, but he's actually a really nice guy. There was a girl that was really mean to him, and she was just always mean to him. When he was younger, he didn't look at anybody. He just, me and him spoke about autism quite a bit. Now, when he got older, every time that he saw her, he came to dread her and her meanness. So when she comes in and the first thing she does is mean mug him, he stares at her like, "Why are you staring at me, lady?" And then she complains. She's like, "He's undressing. I can feel him undressing me with his eyes." No, lady, you're mean to him. He's afraid of you. And that last part, he won't admit. He won't admit that he's afraid of her. They say upwards of 70% of all perpetrators were victims as children. 70%. For a lot of us who grew up in the system, the first person to ever touch us inappropriately was somebody else we were in the system with. And the first person to touch them inappropriately was one of their parents. You don't see as many boys in those places. What places am I talking about? Well, the places they put you when you tell. When you tell somebody. Here's an important one. Procedure signals, Morse code, flags. Even teaches you how to make the machine. A lot of useful information in here. But they felt that it was so important. They're at the very beginning of the book. Before you get to any of this first aid and medical and getting people out there, and yeah, that's a lot of the stuff that's in there. Useful stuff. If you got girls, buy them the Boy Scout handbook. Don't need to put them into Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or any of that. Get them the handbook. Send them outside with some shoestring and say, hey, bring me back something. They might go out there and make a trap and get you a new pet or a squirrel for dinner. They might make you a log cabin. Any number of things. First aid, though, is chapter 17. Chapter 17. I'm folding up the corners so that it's earmarked. That way the edge of my book ends up looking like that. And that's just from getting started. Some stuff in the back, scouting opportunities, stuff like that, I don't care about. I care about the stuff that's useful, that makes a difference. I don't care about your badge. Okay, so you were a Weeblo. That doesn't mean anything to me. I know it goes through the ranking system in here, and I have read this entire book, but that wasn't something that interested me, so it wasn't something I remembered. Same with most people. If I was to tell a girl who didn't find it appropriate that I touched her butt, right? Let's say I was to touch a woman's backside inappropriately. She didn't want it. It was unwanted touching, even if I'm a little kid, you know. She goes home and she cries. She tells her mom. Mom calls over and tells me, hey, you made my daughter cry. It's not all right. You feel bad. You don't want to do that ever again. You don't ever want to do that ever again. Sometimes you get bad advice. That doesn't make it okay. My older brother's piece of advice was if you like a girl, you put your hand on her butt. If she doesn't like it, she'll slap you. That is not always true. The right thing for Nicole to do was to go tell her mother. And what did her mother do? Her mother called up my mother. And I got to feel bad about how I made Nicole cry. I still feel bad about that to this day. Now, albeit I didn't really know much, what I knew by that point in my life was the system. people that I was locked up with, they weren't talking about having their heinies touched. It was all worse than that. Every bit of it. Does that mean that Nicole has no right to complain? That she has no right to feel violated? No, she absolutely had every right to feel violated. My understanding of boundaries at that point was very different from most of y'all's. I was scared shitless of sex, yeah. Wasn't interested in sex, but you know what? I did want companionship. I did want a friend. And in the system, you got the no contact rule. So you never touch anybody, ever. That's foreign. There's also men who are sexually abused. It's not just children. There's grown men who are sexually abused. Not just in prison, but in everyday life. And people pick the most vulnerable, the ones people are least likely to believe. The wallflowers, ones who are not popular or not pretty, the ones that are short and hefty, the ones that are skinny, scrawny. That's the ones they pick. Now, sure, Nicole wasn't going to get put in an institution for what happened. She wasn't going to have that much of a reaction to it. I mean, crying about it was. Years later, she told me she didn't even remember it. She said, "It's all right, Sean. I don't even remember it." I do. I'll remember it till the day I die. I remember at the time that it was traumatic for her. And that's what made it traumatic for me. By that point in my life, I'd gone through what a lot of you guys would consider long-term abuse and severe psychological trauma. I've been in the system for years. I had grown men and teens who were older than me stick their penis in my rectum. You can't say that as a boy. You're demasculated. You aren't a man anymore. You can't be a man. You can't be a man if you've been violated in that way. You just need to man up. You need to shut up. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. Even if it did happen, it didn't happen. And you can't ever admit that it ever happened, because if you admit that it happened, you'll never get your life back. You'll never be considered a man or treated like a man. And there's when you've been through something traumatic and somebody else has also been through something traumatic, and you're both trying to help each other, and both of your minds are a mess. You know what I was gonna do? Yeah, I got this plan to go off in the woods, forget the rest of the world exists. I remember the trauma. I remember what it was like to be that kid, going through those things and being treated like it was my fault and my choice. I'm making a live video at the moment. I'm making a live video. I'll be done in a minute.
Oh, yeah.
Will this work in the microwave?
Yes.
Alright. Anyway, as many of y'all know, my champion causes are children, mostly survivors of severe physical and sexual abuse. There's a lot of other kinds of abuse too. And I know I bring up the topic of males being abused in that way a lot. And I also bring up the being dismissive a lot. I know that nearly every one of my videos touches on these topics and these subjects. And it touches on the subjects of minority oppression, and also how both males and females are treated in different situations, and also how not all of those situations are the same. Something that traumatizes you, like Brandon Ratner, who, when he went over, he was invited to Chris's party, and Veronica Randall was spreading rumors about him. And so when Brandon got to this party, people were not very nice to him. And his friend, Chris, didn't do nothing. Brandon probably spent about an hour and a half talking about that over 3 different phone calls. 3 more private phone calls than what I have on video. This is sometimes you just gotta get up and shrug it off. People say that a lot. But then they do it to somebody else. I mean, just let's imagine if you were somewhere last night and somebody who was touching you inappropriately was also trying to touch other people inappropriately. Let's say he only tried to touch one other person inappropriately. Only one. That's 2 people in one night. 2 people in one night. Now, let's look at 365 days a year. Let's say 2 people in one night times 365. What is that, 730? That's 730 people being violated by one predator. Because you didn't say anything. You didn't do anything. You let it go on for an extra day. Because you were drunk. Or an extra week. Because you got a warrant. But you almost got it taken care of. We don't want to tell female predators or female victims the same things that we tell men. Nicole, when she went and told her mother What happened? Well, what was the result of her telling me? Correction in my behavior. Duh. A correction in my behavior. That's good parenting. Tina Span, you did a great job. In my personal opinion, you did 100% perfectly the right thing. Calling up my mom and letting me know that I made Nicole cry, that was 100% the right thing to do. After growing up in the system, I'd never even occurred to me at that point, even with everything that I'd gone through, all of the sexual abuse that I'd gone through, all of the trauma that I'd gone through. It didn't even occur to me that not listening to my older brother, who, women adored, kind of looked like Charlie Sheen with slightly crooked teeth. Later on, they got knocked a lot crooked, but whatever. I didn't know. Now, yeah, you get these classes when you're in institutions. You learn about appropriate and inappropriate touching, but it's not taught the same. It's taught in that system as if everything is wrong, and you always have to ask first. If you ask a woman, she'll probably tell you no. So a lot of people get this thing in their head of, oh, well, I just won't ask. No, that'll get you in a lot of trouble. You need to ask. If you don't know, you don't know, and that's understandable. If you don't know, and then somebody informs you that it's wrong, but then you continue to do it, your behavior has not been corrected. It's like when your daughter comes up and she says, hey, that little boy was just hitting me. And you tell her, oh, well, that's just because he likes you. That is bad parenting. Bad parenting. No, 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 no. Your child came up to you about a predator, about someone who had done something predatory towards them. And rather than make sure that the correction is made on the part of the predator, you have corrected your own child into doing something that is harmful to your child. You are teaching them from day one. Now, in that example, it's a daughter. You guys are kind of sort of making that connection now, right? It's because it's a girl. Starting to make that connection. The boy is less likely to speak up. For every daughter out there who's got cuts all up and down her arms, there's a son out there with a hole in his head. Who hung himself in the closet. Or who stepped out in front of a bus. Or drank Drano. It's horrible. See, girls are more likely to cut because they're more likely to be heard. They have hope. For every cut on your daughter, that's another time that she wanted to say something, but she was afraid you weren't going to listen because you didn't. Each one of those cuts represents a time that she tried. may look at it and go, well, there's no way my daughter's got hundreds upon hundreds of cuts. I listened every time. No, you didn't. He hit you because he likes you. No, he hit you because he's a mean little bastard who thinks it's okay. And you didn't correct that in him. I'm trying to show you the predators and what they do. And who they pick. And hope it isn't you. I got a lot of dead friends. I got a lot of them. There are a lot of male victims. A lot of us. And we can't say nothing. Or we're not men anymore. Our predators' behaviors are never corrected, so they do it again and again. A male who's being molested in the system can be molested by the same doctor, same staff member, same foster father, son, or even daughter. They can molest that little boy for years. Years. Even though he said something, they can still get away with it for years. But that's the system that I grew up in, folks. You do that to your kids, they go into the system, somebody who's lived in the system most of their life like me. When I was a kid, my dad couldn't stay off the cocaine, my mom couldn't stay off the cocaine. I grew up in a foster care system in Colorado, and it was bad. And when you tell on your predators, your kid with no parents, dude, what the fuck do you think's gonna happen? There's nobody there to protect you. You're going to the lockup. That's how it's gonna be. If you got parents, they'll come and get you. If you don't got parents, you're stuck with the bad like kids. And that's scary. Oh, restricted caller is getting back a hold of me now. Anyway, I'm gonna end the video now. Just need you guys to understand that we need a voice. The male victims need a voice. The female victims need a voice. And as y'all know, the children still need a voice. They're still in that system. 1 in 6. That's 29 million. 29 million. That's not a small number.